MTN SME Hub. Link to growth. Link to success. Link to the ultimate resource for business advice and insights.
Welcome to the Big Small Business Show, the show for all our entrepreneurs out there, entrepreneurs who are building businesses, building legacies, and supporting not only themselves, their families, their extended families, but the economy as a whole. Now, in order to grow our businesses, we need resources, and often as we're growing, we don't have the exact resources that we need, and that's when we might have to think a bit differently about how we grow our business. So today we've decided to dedicate this whole show to particularly around the concept of what is called a fractional either CFO or a fractional CEO, or the fractional market that's evolving out there, and with a particular focus for us as entrepreneurs around the finance function. So in studio today we've brought Rowan De Klerk. He's founder and CEO of CFO Centre. Welcome.
Thank you, Allon. Nice to be with you.
So we're gonna focus on a CFO, the fractional CFO. So let's just describe, what is it? What is a fractional CFO?
Yes, it's a big title, but really it's a CFO. It's just a CFO that comes in part-time or 1 day a week, two days a week, whatever the client is looking for. It's a higher level person that probably isn't afforded on a full-time basis.
Yeah.
Or a client doesn't really want a full-time, but they need that strategic commercial support of a properly qualified chartered accountant CFO.
So who is the market for that? Because if you think about in small businesses, which is most of the people who are watching today, they might think, well, I've got an accountant who does my books. So when do you make that step between a CFO, fractional or not fractional, and an accountant, and perhaps describe the difference between the two?
Sure. So the best way to say it is the auditor accountant is often looking at the past, trying to evaluate what's going on, maybe verifying in some way what the past is, doing some compliance. And then your day-to-day accountants that often firms have, a bookkeeper or a finance manager, are looking at the day-to-day, trying to understand and report on the day-to-day, doing the taxes, keeping up with recording, reporting. And the CFO is always about the future. What does the future look like? How can we forecast? How can we best guess? How can we plan financial leadership around what the business needs to do into the future?
So, looking at a guy like you with, I don't know if I've got the right to speak about grey hair, but somebody with grey hair, very often we look at people with grey hair and say they're very expensive, and I get that's why it's fractional, so we can afford it. But I think people miss a gauge when is the right time to bring in that person. They wait too late almost to bring in that grey hair into the business. Am I correct in
yes,
that?
You are. So it's sort of a moving from small to medium-sized company that's grown a little bit, learned where their market is, understood a little bit about where they are and what's working. And then we often are answering the more complex questions in business, the commercial questions, the growth, the structures, what does it look like, some tax planning, looking at the future of where this business wants to go and how we can actualize that and actually deliver those goals and make them, bring them into reality.
So how does it actually work if I've got an accountant? Is there potential conflict between the two, or do they work well with an accountant, internal or external?
So a CFO really works well with an accountant, because if you look at any corporate structure, it would always have the tiers. You'd have your lower levels, you'd have your sort of team members, your finance managers, and then your higher tiers. So the CFO's job is really to design the operational structure, build the platform, and enable that to then be used as the growth platform for the business, and then inform the strategic elements after that. So there's a sort of a symbiotic relationship between a finance team, a finance manager, and the CFO, definitely.
So I want to get quite practical. This is a very, very much about practicality. So you my fractional CFO. I've got you for 1 day a week. And I have, I need you now for another thing on a Wednesday. You come every Monday, but for whatever reason, there's a meeting and I need you.
Yes.
How would that work from a practical perspective?
So it's pretty flexible. Our model would be, you might book a Monday, let's say every week, just to get a rhythm going. Rhythms are important with the fractional model because you're not there every day. So when the CFO is available, when the ExCo meeting happens, but if there's a shareholder meeting or meeting with the bankers, absolutely, we would flex the model to suit that. Some people come in on half days, so you might be 2 half days a week. When there's a shareholders meeting, they'll be there. So you're almost on tap for that month. And there could be a phone call that's needed because a big part of a CFO's role is to help with decision making on the data for decisions. And when a CEO is thinking about something, they would be calling, and those type of conversations are handled. There might be a necessary meeting or an online meeting, so absolutely available for those.
So I want to ask it in a slightly different way. Do you effectively consult, or is there something that you do?
So we do a lot. I'd say that's the difference between a non-exec and an employee. We sort of sit in the middle of that. And so the CFO, that's why you need the 2 to 4 to 6 days in that client, because you running a model, looking at a business feasibility, developing reporting that is more sophisticated, very summarized, looking at the profit engine of the business, trying to understand how that can be improved. What's the economic model? Is it viable into the future? Helping with some fundamental changes in that, looking at the team, are the right people in the right jobs, and then helping train and maybe mentor, coach some of the team into what they should be doing, building governance structures and sort of discipline frameworks, if you want to call them, rather than controls in the business. So there's a lot of doing and structuring, designing, and then helping implement as well. So it's not just the write-up document that people are used to from a consultant, because we're also working with SMEs and entrepreneurs. 1 page is enough for an entrepreneur. Not looking for a brochure or a consultant's document. So we very much become part of the internal team and like to see ourselves as part of the furniture rather than an external coming in. We are sort of the CFO of the business, and we'll take that role, even though it's on a fractional basis.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Rowan De Klerk. Stay tuned.
MTN SME Hub, link to business success.